Hello everyone, Circeon here. How are you all doing today? As you can see, we are currently sitting in yet another cart bound for Helgen. Skyrim truly has its hold on me, and all I can do is hypnotically answer to its beck and call. Last time I played as an orc named Gorkosh who took the phrase, "forge your own destiny," a little too seriously, and played through the entire game with only self-crafted items. He ended up as a heavy armor warrior, which made me question how a playthrough would go as his exact opposite, that being a light armor mage. However, that didn't seem like it would be all that difficult, up until I had one of those classic lightbulb moments. You see, mages in Skyrim are pretty OP, being that they can cast a slew of high-powered spells from a range which progressively gets stronger as you work your way up the tiers. But what if you were stuck using spells from only the lowest possible tier, that being Novice? Well then, things may just get a bit more interesting. So today I'll be seeing if I can beat Skyrim using only Novice level spells. The rules of the run are simple. I'm only allowed to use Novice level spells. Alchemy will be allowed, but not for the use of poisons. And finally, shouts will be used for story progression, with the only exception being Dragonrend, which I'll be using for the purposes of convenience rather than necessity. With all the rules out of the way, let's begin. I chose a Dark Elf as my race since any perks awarded to me by picking an Altmer can easily be acquired via enchanting. Also, as far as I'm aware, the plus 50 fire resistance we gain by being a Dark Elf stacks with any amount of magic resistance we acquire in our future endeavors, which is a boon too good to pass up. We easily make our way through Helgen and begin manically picking up all the flora we come across on our way to Riverwood, only stopping to touch the Mage's Stone for the plus 20% boost to experience gained through our Magicka skills. And as a side note, anytime you see me going through a massive crafting grind, just know I have the proper stone and well-rested bonus equipped for the extra experience boost. Anyways, we make our way to Riverwood and begin chopping up some wood which we'll sell to Hod once Girder stops yapping. We'll need this money along with all the gold we got for selling our Helgen loot to Alvor in order to hitch a ride over to Soltheim. However, I didn't grab a cart ride over to Windhelm like most of you probably thought I would. Instead, I decided to travel there on foot, devilishly destroying any wildlife I came across along the way in order to start gaining some much-needed experience in my destruction skill. As soon as I set foot in Soltheim, I made a mad dash over to Tel Mithrin in order to acquire a very specific novice level spell that I can only purchase here. Unfortunately, Neloth doesn't sell said spell, his apprentice does, and in order to use his services, I have to deal with the Ash Guardian he accidentally unleashed due to his lack of material casting components. It managed to kill us quite a number of times before we successfully baited it over to some weirdos worshipping a rock who ganged up and disposed of it real quick. With our good deed accomplished, we can talk to McFumbles to purchase all the novice level spell tomes he has on hand, including the spell we came all this way for, Bound Dagger. Some of you are probably wondering if using Bound Dagger would count as a technicality to the rules, since it's technically a weapon and not really a spell in the traditional sense. But the way I see it is that this is a temporary weapon summoned by a novice level spell. Also, it's the only way I can cast Soul Trap on enemies since Soul Trap is itself an apprentice level spell. Before leaving Soltheim, I decided to add a bit more power to my growing arsenal and completed some of Neloth's errands to gain access to the Black Book in his staff enchantry, which, spoiler alert, I never ended up using. I also braved the Raven Rock mine to snag the Black Book hidden in there, which was infinitely harder due to the Draugr overlords. But I eventually made my way through, grabbed the Black Book, and chose the boon Lover's Insight, which was the most helpful of the 3 options, at least for now. From here, I traveled back to Skyrim in order to try and enter the College of Winterhold. If I could gain access, then I could easily supply myself with an easy stock of soul gems from the Master Mages. However, there was a slight problem. Feralda only has a select set of spells that she'll ask you to use in order to convince her you're worthy of entering the college. Those spells are Firebolt, Healing Hands, Fury, Mage Light, and Conjure Flame Atronach, all of which are apprentice level spells, meaning that we would forever be rejected from going to college. This was the beginning of Azor's Runt's spiral into insanity, but we'll touch back on that later. For now, we made our way up to Dragon's Reach only to be told to throw ourselves into the nearest dungeon by the court wizard Farengar. In comparison to the dungeon within Ravenrock Mines, Bleakfall's Burrow was extremely easy, and we cleared the entire dungeon within the span of about 10 minutes. This feat was apparently so impressive that the Jarl insists that we help deal with a dragon attacking his western watchtower, which we do, only for us to absorb its soul afterwards, proclaiming us as Dragonborn. Upon returning to Jarl Balgruuf, he does his best monkey with symbols impression and gifts us multiple items from his armory, the title of Thane, our own personal housecarl, a firm handshake, and asks whether or not we'd allow him the privilege of shining our boots. With Lydia in tow, we make our way over to Golden Hills Plantation to evict its current tenants and begin planting the seeds for our eventual alchemy grind. By this point, I had reached level 10 and acquired enough perk points to grab Augmented Flames and Shock level 1, as well as the Mystic Binding perk, which would allow our Bound Dagger to cast Soul Trap on hit. As a brief comparison, here is our Elemental Flare spell before our augmented perks, and here it is afterwards. I know 16 damage doesn't seem like a lot, but trust me, it is. Thanks to our new Mystic Binding perk, we can now run around the wilds of Skyrim and soul trap any unfortunate creature we come across into one of the many empty soul gems I've acquired thus far. Whilst on my rampage, I came across some iron gauntlets of major smithing, which reminded me that I should probably start my smithing grind sooner rather than later. So I delved into some of the nearby iron mines to mine up some much needed iron ore before returning to my plantation in order to forge a shitload of leather bracers with all the leather I had recently procured. Upon upgrading my armor, I reached 30 in smithing and enchanted the majority of my leather bracers, which brought my enchanting all the way up to level 60. Following that, I went on my first big alchemy grind, which bumped that skill up to 47. Doing all of this shot me straight up to level 17, which was more than enough to begin my mid-game grind. So I grabbed a carriage over to Riften and made my way down to the docks to talk to Miss Deepest Fathoms and begin the quest Unfathomable Depths. I made sure to park my horse on the balcony of a Vodchenzel in order to make transporting all the Dwemer smeltables, those being the large decorative and non-decorative Dwemer struts, bent Dwemer scrap metal, large and small Dwemer plate metal, and solid Dwemer metal, back to my home a lot easier. Upon returning the Dwemer lexicon to its resting place, I acquired the boon Ancient Knowledge, which hastens smithing experience I gained by 15%. While I was traveling to some of the Dwemer ruins dotted along Skyrim, I was attacked by a Dark Brotherhood assassin, which meant that Astrid's life was now forfeit. And unlike Gorkosh, Azor's Runt was gonna make sure to finish the job.
promised a most generous reward. I'll make sure the Emperor himself hears of all you've accomplished. You've made Skyrim a better place. Citizen?
With that now taken care of, I continued delving into some of the many ruins and mines of Skyrim in order to collect more ore and Dwemer smeltables, which eventually led me to the city of Markarth. Upon arrival, I saved some random woman from an attempted assassination, only to be thrown in prison myself by the corrupt guards for disturbing the peace. And you all know what that means. It's time for a prison break. Before leaving, I made sure to mine up all the silver ore within Signa Mine in order to stick it to the corrupt law officials. Before then choosing the wildcard option and attacking Madanok just before he exits the dungeon. By doing this, we can dispose of him while technically still siding with his faction, which means Throne Our Throat Stuffer hands us his family ring before being executed by a clan of crazed cannibals. With that little side quest out of the way, we can make our way up to Understone Keep to kill Calcemo's pet spider before gold bossing our way into his museum to swipe all his smeltables. There's one last thing we can do while in Markarth. By breaking into the Temple of Dibella's inner sanctum, we can be tasked with finding their Sibyl, which the priest had conveniently just finished geolocating. We made a quick pit stop in Kolkseger Mine as well as the Sauernok Mine in Karthweston to mine up some gold and silver ore before rescuing the Dibellan Sibyl, who was just a little girl, which raised several questions which will never be answered. Upon bringing her back to the Temple of Dibella, we're told to prostrate ourselves at their shrine, an act I'm sure isn't considered sacrilege to Great Lady Azora, and are awarded the boon Agent of Dibella, which may or may not stack with Lover's Insight. Not that it matters, since the boon specifies combat damage, making this entire errand pointless. The last thing I did before returning to my plantation was complete the Lost to the Ages questline, mostly for all the Dwemer smeltables I plundered along the way, but for those of you curious, I forged the Ethereum Crown, an item I never wore because it didn't mesh with my endgame armor. With no more loose ends to tie up at the moment, I could begin my mid-game crafting session, and if all goes according to plan, there will be no other crafting session past this point. Here are all the items I've saved up to this point. Comment down below whether you think it's enough to get me to 100 smithing. Did you do it? Alright, let's begin. Dang it, I was so close. If only I had made some slightly different choices, I might have just had it. Wait a minute. And done. 100 smithing. As it turns out, my mistake was not crafting enough jeweled rings. Also, as a post-production note, I could have resmithed a majority of my dwarven bows to gain the required smithing experience, which meant I was guaranteed to hit 100 smithing no matter what. For those of you interested, here is what it took me to get to 100 smithing from where I was before. And now we can see if I've trapped enough souls to reach 100 enchanting. Nope. Stuck at 90, which means it's off to collect some enchanting books, right after acquiring Scholar's Insight from the Black Book we swiped from the Raven Rock mines. Luckily, I had the insight to do that beforehand, huh? Alright, I'll just get to it. We can find Catalog of Weapon Enchantments within the White Hall in Dawnstar, Twin Secrets hiding in a basket within the Jarl's Longhouse in Winterhold, Catalog of Armor Enchantments within Fort Amal, Enchanter's Primer within Carlotta's house in Whiterun, and a Tragedy in Black inside the Glenmoral Cavern. With 100 enchanting, we can nab the extra effect perk, which allows us to put 2 enchantments on a single piece of gear and make ourselves a basic set of alchemy gear, which we then use to try and power level our way to 100 alchemy, which works so long as we take the perks to boost our alchemy skill along the way. With 100 in all 3 crafting skills, it was time to forge my endgame armor. I began by doing an enchanting loop to try and get myself some slightly better crafting gear, which I used to brew up some potions of smithing and enchanting. I then drank my potion of smithing before improving my gear to legendary quality and heading back inside to slug down my enchanting potion to enchant my gear with slightly stronger effects. And here are the end results. My destruction spells cost 58% less Magicka to cast. I now have an additional 144 Magicka to work with, which regenerates 216% faster than normal, resist 43% of frost damage along with 46% of Magicka damage altogether, and can now craft health and Magicka potions which restore 200 points a pop. With no further use for enchanting, I made the skill legendary and put the points into skills more worth my time, like the second stage of Augmented Flames and Shock, bringing my elemental flare's damage to 66. But that is nowhere near how strong it can actually get, along with us, because now was the time for our endgame preparations. I made my way back over to Riften, making sure to cast the Fury spell on any wildlife I saw along the way to start bumping up my illusion skill, which is very important as you'll see later on. Once in Riften, I moseyed my way over to the Temple of Mara to begin another totally non-sacrilegious quest for another boon. The first location this questline takes us to is Ivarstead, which is conveniently close to the 7,000 steps. So after telling Clemic to nut up, we made our way up to High Hrothgar to continue the main story. The next location on our sacrilegious ceremony was Markarth, where we had to help Calcimo warm the bed of his lover, which is the least we can do after Azor's runt smelted his lifelong research away. The last place on the docket was a monument close to our plantation, where we had to evict yet another pair of ghosts from our property. With all 3 errands complete, we can return to the Temple of Mara and acquire the boon Agent of Mara, which gives us a flat plus 15 to magic resistance. During these errands, I managed to claw my way up to 40 illusion, but to get the perks I wanted, I needed 50. So you all know what that means. It's time for another literary adventure. We can find the book 2920 Sun's Dawn version 2 within the inner sanctum of Debella's temple, Mystery of Talara part 4 beside Nepos' bed in Markarth, Before the Ages of Man in Balgruff's study within Dragon's Reach, the Blackguards on trial behind the counter of the White File in Windhelm, and incident at Necrom within Pine Moon Cave. Interesting note about Pine Moon Cave, I actually died there quite a few times by the hands of the master vampire located within. It wasn't to his magic, mind you, but the swings from his base iron sword, which told Azor's Runt and I that we needed to get even stronger. Thankfully, I knew just the place. Meet the Bony Boys, located within Whiterun's Hall of the Dead. Their goal in life is to help anyone who doesn't smite them on sight train up their armor and magic skills. By continually allowing ourselves to be a part of the Bone Zone, we can level up our light armor skill. And by taking momentary reprieves to heal up and spam cast Oak Flesh, we can train both our restoration and alteration skills. We stay here until we reach 50 in light armor and 60 in alteration, at which point we embark on yet another literary adventure. First up, the alteration books. We can find Breathing Water inside a basket within Kjaldr's house in Winterhold, Daughter of the Nibbin sitting on a table within Understone Keep, Reality and Other Falsehoods within the basement of Snowshod Farm just outside Riften, Sithis within the now abandoned Dark Brotherhood Sanctuary, and the Lunar Lorcan within the Solitude Lighthouse. Next, light armor. The books Ice and Chitin can be found tucked behind a pillar of the guard's room in the Markarth Guard Tower. Yornabray's Last Dance can be found in the Autumn Watch Tower south of Iverstead. The rear guard is in Solitude's Castle Dower in the Leftern Guard Barracks. And the refugees can be found upstairs in the Solitude Blacksmith. With our new levels in alteration and light armor, I can grab the third level of magic resistance to block 30% of a spell's effects, and increase my light armor rating by 60%, which brings my armor up to 447. But why stop there? By swinging by Darkwater Mill, I can take a short sprint to touch the Atronach Stone, which will give me a flat 50% chance to absorb any spell sent my way. Which, yes, includes dragging breath attacks. So in case you weren't paying attention, I now resist 61% of magic damage, block 30% of a spell's effects, have a flat 50% chance to outright absorb any and all magic attacks sent my way, and all of that is on top of my 50% fire resistance and 43% frost resistance. Oh, and I forgot to mention, the reason we needed that illusion training from a while back was to grab the perks Kindred Mage and Aspect of Terror. The reason being is that these perks work in conjuncture with the perk Intense Flames, which adds a fear effect to an enemy once their health is low. You may be asking, well, what does that mean? Well, it means that Aspect of Terror increases the effect of any fear spell, which, thanks to Intense Flames, my Elemental Flare is now considered, boosting its damage from 66 to a whopping 112. And that's before the dual casting perk, which further increases our damage by a multiple of 2.2, putting our total damage without fortified destruction potions at a whopping 246.4 damage per hit on a novice level spell. From here on out, Azor's Runt is pretty much unkillable, so I'll speed my way along the main and DLC quest lines. We storm Ustengrav only to find that the MacGuffin we're looking for was swiped by Delphine, who wants to watch us slurp up a dragon's soul. A sentence which has infinitely worse connotations now that we're both a woman and agent of Dibella. After a hot bowl of dragon soup, we're bombarded with thousands of Thalmor conspiracy theories by dipshit McGee and told to storm the Thalmor embassy for proof they're putting skooma in the water, which is turning the mud crabs gay. We don't find that, though we do learn of a man named Esben who may know something about the Dragon Crisis. One yapping session later, and we find ourselves speaking to Parthenax, who tells us we'll need Dragonren to defeat Alduin. And the only way to do that is with an Elder Scroll, the namesake of the series. Surely it must be in a place of grave and utmost rapport, right? Why do I even bother? While in Blackreach, I decided to shout at the big glowing ball to summon in a special dragon for us to fight. Here's how that went. I'd love to tell y'all that Alduin put up more of a fight than old Volthor, y'all, but he went down nearly twice as fast. He attempted to get out of dodge, but I mind broke one of his buddies with my Thume and rode him off the Skull Dolphin, where I made short work of his chief portal protector. I'd love to tell y'all that our climactic final clash with Alduin was one for the ages, but it was a 5-on-1 battle. The poor bastard never stood a chance. Now it was on to the Dawnguard DLC. We begin by speaking to Isran in his personal goon castle, who tells us to go kill some vampires nestled in some dank dark cave. Within said dank dark cave, I met the love of my life, who asked if I could escort her back home. Once there, I tried to slyly ask her father for his daughter's hand in marriage, to which he immediately banished me. Returning to Isran, he orders me to assemble his goon squad, after which I'm reunited with my eternal love. I decide life is too short and forge her a wedding gift, which she immediately rejects. Her rejection sends Azor's Runt back to the point of her being rejected from the College of Winterhold, which sends us into such a fit of intoxicatingly fueled rage that we reduce her pet dog, ex-boyfriend, and father to ashes within the span of 24 hours. Which, come to think of it, may have been a slight overreaction. And upon reflection, Serana's rejection,
hands to yourself,
may have just been her attempt at playful flirting. Well, there's just one thing we can do now, and that's flee the continent. I'll be returning to my homeland in Morrowind. Hopefully those rock worshippers haven't done anything too mischievous while I was away. By Azora, by Azora, by Azora! So I went around shouting at these weird stones to fuck off, which made this guy Mirrak so mad that he convinced his eldritch mana daddy to kill this random woman's father. In retaliation for this clear slight against us, I stormed into his pocket dimension, mind broke his dragon, and annihilated him in a plasmatic fire bath. However, his death was so unsatisfactory to me that I decided to awaken Karstag, one of the most powerful enemies in Skyrim, for a real test of the magical might of Azor's Runt. Welp, that's it. One of the most powerful enemies in Skyrim, slain with only novice level spells. Thanks for watching to the end of the video. On screen now are all the perks I took to get this far. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to leave a like. And while you're at it, comment down below any future challenges you'd like to see me face. That's all for me. Take care, and have a great rest of your day.
Do you get to the Cloud District very often? Oh, what am I saying? Of course you don't. Have a fast